Hey gang, we're at Stateville Prison today, a very infamous place south of Chicago, opened in 1925. 1,500 prisoners were here, and now it's a lot bigger. We're gonna take a look at the cemetery that's a little bit of ways away from here for some infamous prisoners that were executed here. But let me tell you, this is a very scary place. This is where they have the roundhouses. They have two of them. They've been closed down since 2016. They called it the Thunderdome. And man, imagine being in a circular cage, well, in cages in a circle with a guardhouse in the middle. And it was always noisy. It was like, well, it was like pure hell. So let's go to the cemetery and we'll look at some graves. So many stones, so many lives, and these are forgotten lives. Indeed, we're at the cemetery here, one of the cemeteries for the prison, the old cemetery. We're across the street from St. Mary's, which is an established Catholic cemetery, but here we see a monument that marks this place with some notable names, but what I find eerie is this inscription right here. They paid their debt to society. May God remit their debt to him. Indeed. Indeed, the debt has been paid. I have to believe. So we're going to walk. We're going to look at some of these stones. Some of them, many of them, we're not going to be able to read. Lost in the sands of time, as I say. But there are 5 people we're going to talk about that were in the prison that died here in different ways, some by execution. I did find one of them, the last one we're going to talk about. But there's some interesting things to talk about with these gravestones. Now, as you look at these stones, the front row here, and there looks to be about 8 rows spanning the north and south direction here. But as you go all the way back to this very first row, way back there by the trees, those are the first graves. In fact, that one we're pointed on is probably the first one buried. A guy named John Mack. Now, I wasn't able to confirm that was him because these are so worn away. Some of the people may know, some of you viewers may have been here and know who's who, but I did identify one. Now, one interesting thing to note on these stones back in the day is people were identified by their race. And of course, W would stand for white, that we see here, the W. And if you see a C, that would be for African American, black, and it would be a C for colored. Times we lived in. The first inmate to be buried here at the cemetery was a man named John Mack. He was convicted of robbery in Cook County. He had been serving a 1.5 years of a 3 to 20 year sentence when he died on July 18th, 1925. He was 27 years old and he had an alias. His name was Little Johnny Danders. They say he was illiterate. One woman who is buried here is one of 2 Indians listed on the roster of the dead. Her name was Arvira Williams. Like Mac, she was a convicted robber. She was sentenced to 1 year to life, which is a very interesting sentence, 1 year to life. She was 24 years old when she arrived at actually the Joliet Correctional Center, kind of the sister prison in the area, very similar. She died about 3 months later of tuberculosis. Just imagine the diseases going around those prisons at the time. Interspersed here are also the remains of parts of inmates. There are a total of 4 legs, 1 arm, and a hand buried here somewhere. The state was responsible for these people, and when a limb was amputated, the prison had to show what they did with it, so they would bury the parts here. Now, there were also some notorious inmates that were buried here. Of course, a lot of bad people went through this prison system. John Brown was one of them. He was actually one of 3 men who were executed in December of 1928 for the murder of a Lake County farmer. That would be to the northwest of Chicago. The farmer had given work to one of Brown's accomplices and made the fatal mistake of showing this Dominic Brassetti some of his money in the process of revealing the tin can wherein his money and Liberty bonds were hidden, quote unquote. Brassetti returned to the farmhouse with Brown and a 3rd man, a guy named Claude Clark. And of course the farmer refused to let them inside, so he was shot right through the door and then beaten to death. More than a year later, the 3 were executed on the very same day here, and their deaths marked the first time in Illinois in which the electric chair, rather than the hangman's noose, was used. Then there was one named John Jaliga. He was 33 years old. He was an unemployed steelworker from Whiting, Indiana. He was one of 2 men arrested for the robbery and murder of a Crete farmer after being identified by his wife, the farmer's wife, who was also shot. She had said, quote unquote, "That's the man who shot me like a dog." It is said that the newspapers reported almost gleefully Jaliga's last hours of his life before his execution. One of the articles reported the prison band rehearsed in the hope it would drown out the hum of the electric chair as it was being tested. But the noise from the death house reached Jaliga's ears, and they say he wept hysterically. Just imagine on death row in that cell, hearing that electric chair buzzing on and off. I think I would be weeping too. Terrorizing. On October 21st, 1938, he was executed. He was killed by 3 minutes and 2,300 volts. We do find the grave of Leo Jordan, the last man we're going to talk about, and it was a splintered piece of a pencil that led this 23-year-old to the electric chair. Leo was an ex-convict from Fulton, Illinois. He was last seen with a 5-year-old boy. Their boy was named Warren Paul Snyder. And then the boy's body was found. His throat was slashed in a wooded area. And of course, all eyes were looking at Leo Jordan because he was the last man seen with the boy. Of course, Jordan denied he had anything to do with the murder, but then the police confronted him with a broken piece of pencil found beside the child's body. And then they found another piece of a pencil in Jordan's pocket. They say that Jordan paled and trembled as they put the broken ends together and found that they fit exactly, perfectly. Well, he soon confessed to the crime and was executed in May of 1942. And this is his grave. Well, it's been almost 50 years since the last inmate was buried here, but the staff still comes to mow the lawn. Rest in peace to all of those forgotten names, forgotten faces that rest here. Rest in peace.